Yeah, so let's just start off a little bit with just some basics here. So we're going to start with what are mushrooms? Right. So mushrooms are their own kingdom. Okay. So we'll do a little taxonomy here. They're in the kingdom of fungi. Some people think that mushrooms are plants. That is not true. Mushrooms are actually their own thing altogether, and they're actually even closer to animals than they are plants. So when we're talking about mushrooms here, I'll be giving when I actually show the video, I'll show you guys different types of mushrooms, and I'll be talking about them using mostly their scientific name. So I'll be posting their scientific name, but also their common name underneath that as well. Within this, so underneath kingdom, right, you have a few other, it breaks down a little further, and eventually you get to genus, and then you get to species. So for example, you have like amanitas, right? It's a very common type of mushroom, right? A lot of people know what it is. That's the genus. And then if you wanted to get more specific, you could have an Amanita muscaria, which are those red amanitas with the white little spots, and that's your species. Okay? All right. So let's sort of move on from there. And let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the basic characteristics. So that we're all on the same page with some of the terms I'll be using. Oh man, I'm bad at writing. Okay, so I'm going to do a little drawing down here. Let's see. All right, so here's our basic little mushroom here. Put a couple warts on the top. All right, basic little mushroom. All right, so here are your basic characteristics of a mushroom. You have, of course, the cap of the mushroom is up here, right? You have most mushrooms, I shouldn't even say most mushrooms, but many mushrooms have gills, right? And those are underneath the cap. And then from the gills, that's the reason you have gills in the first place, is because they are what produces the spores of many types of mushrooms. So then you have the spores. And spores are kind of like seeds, right? But it's kind of like how the mushroom reproduces, right? So it produces spores, not seeds, and that produces new fungi. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Thank you, 3DCP. Yeah, I was skipping a few things from Kingdom, obviously, here, so we could get down to genus and species. This is not a full science lesson here, bud. All right, so then, all right, you got the gills, you got the cap, you got the spores. This here is not the stem of the mushroom. This is called the stipe. All right, and from there, okay, all right, here's some grass here. Underneath that, many mushrooms, such as amanitas, have a base, and in this case, when it's a bulbous sort of base like this, that's called the vulva. Okay? So there you go. So those are some basic sort of features of most mushrooms, and this is what we'll be talking about. And so I guess let's talk a little bit about how to identify. And then we'll get into the actual looking at real mushrooms here in a second. Okay, so really, there are a few features that you want to pay attention to when you try to identify mushrooms, okay? Essentially, you want to always look at these features that we talked about here. So you want to look at the color of the cap. You want to look at the shape of the stipe, the color of the stipe, the texture of the stipe. You want to look at the gills. What color are the gills? Okay, so we're going to look at, so we're going to say colors, textures, right? So those are some very basic things that you want to do. Okay, and you definitely always want to pay attention to what color is the bottom of the cap. Okay, so bottom of cap slash gills. All right. Now, if the gills are white, you can assume that the spores are going to be white almost all the time. And that's really important with identification because one way to do that is you can actually take a spore print and basically just put a cap down on a piece of paper, let it sit for a while, and then see what color the spores or the print are. Okay. Or you could just usually just look at the bottom of this cap, and you'll be able to see based on the color of the gills usually what color the spores are. So that's one major identification. Some mushrooms have white spores, some have brown spores, some have green spores, some have purple spores. For example, psychedelic mushrooms actually tend to have purple spores. Okay. Other things you want to look at is you want to look at the environment where you found it. Okay. That means what kind of trees is it around? What other plants? Does it have association with a certain tree? Okay, and that brings me to our next point, which is there are two types of mushrooms here. You have saprophytic mushrooms and you have mycorrhizal mushrooms. Okay, a saprophytic mushroom, okay, are ones that are decomposers, and they will grow on dead logs, dead trees, right? I hear a few little mushrooms growing on a tree here. Not very good, whatever. Anyway, the other type are, okay, I'll say that, grow on dead trees. The other type is a mycorrhizal type of mushroom. And this is really important to know which type you have, because if it's mycorrhizal, it means it's going to associate with a specific type of tree. Okay? And the mushroom actually has grown to literally not be able to survive without this tree. Okay? And actually, they form a relationship. The tree feeds the mushroom certain nutrients that it needs to survive, and then the mushroom in return will feed the tree different nutrients it needs to survive. So in other words, in order to actually even be able to identify or to be able to find certain types of mushrooms, you need to know what type of tree they associate with. Okay, so that's really important with identification too, because you know if you are in, say, a pine forest, you're going to be able to find certain types of mushrooms like porcini, or if you're in a Douglas fir forest, you're going to be more likely to find chanterelles, for example, things like that. Okay. Crumble Noob, I see you there. Does spore color tell you if it's poisonous? No, spore color won't tell you if it's poisonous per se, but it will help you get there. So, for example, there's a type of mushroom called a bluet, which is a commonly edible mushroom, and it's a purple mushroom, and its spore print is pink, light pink, white to light pink. Okay. Now, there's another mushroom that looks almost identical to a bluet. It's a type of cortinarius mushroom that are poisonous. Many of them are. And one of the only ways you can tell them apart is if you do a spore print, you'll see the cortinarius will have a rusty orange spore print versus the purple or pink spore print of the bluet. So spore prints will help you if there are look-alike mushrooms, it will help you to determine which it is you have. So yeah, it definitely is going to be helpful in determining whether it's poisonous or not. Blah 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 blah. Best way to take a spore print: literally just take the cap of the mushroom, lay it flat on a piece of paper. If it's a white gilled mushroom, you want it on black paper. If it's a dark gilled mushroom, you want it on white paper. And then you let it sit there. Sometimes I put a bowl over it just so that it doesn't get disturbed by wind or whatever. And you just let it sit there for, literally just an hour. You take it off, and it's kind of magical. You'll see like the pattern of the actual mushroom. It's pretty cool. So yeah, give it a try. Literally, you can do it with any type of mushroom. It's actually pretty cool to do. And you can make art with it. So yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about identification. So other things you want to pay attention to with identification is even the smell of the mushroom, okay? Some mushrooms have, for example, literally smell like almonds, okay? There are certain types, and that's how you can tell if it's this certain type of agaricus mushroom, is if it smells like almonds. Other mushrooms smell like anise or licorice. Other mushrooms just have like a sort of weird, funky, sort of floral smell to them. So smell is one way to identify. And all these features are things that you can learn about if you get an identification book. And that's my biggest recommendation if you want to identify things. Find a book that is specific to your area. So if you live, say, in Northern California, I have a bunch of recommendations for you. If you live on the East Coast or say in Florida, obviously there are going to be completely different species of mushrooms and different environments where they would grow. So you'll want a specific book for your area. And that will tell you about the smells of the mushrooms. That will tell you about all these different things. Okay, yeah, so every mushroom I pick, I smell. Another thing, this is going to sound weird, and you guys are going to be like, what the hell? Another thing is taste, okay? Sometimes I'll be in the forest and I'll find a mushroom and I'm not quite sure which species of a certain genus is. And so what I'll do is I'll literally just take a bite out of it. I'll nibble it up, see how it tastes, and then I'll spit it out. And that's actually okay to do for literally every single mushroom in the mushroom kingdom. There is no mushroom that you can bite, chew, and then spit out and get sick from. Okay, the only way to get sick from mushrooms is to actually ingest it. So even the most deadly mushrooms in the world, like Amanita phalloides, the death cap, even those you can actually nibble them up, which I've even done just to prove a point to people. You can nibble them up, and as long as you spit it out, you're going to be totally fine. Now, obviously, I wouldn't recommend doing that with super deadly mushrooms, just to err on the side of caution, but you can do it. So that's one way to actually identify mushrooms. Is through taste, and that's, literally people will tell you to do that, or mushroom experts will tell you to do that. So let's see, other things are like seasons. Certain seasons of the year, obviously fall and winter are when mushrooms pop up the most in like my climate here, but if you're on the East Coast, late summer is going to be your most best time for mushroom hunting. And then even within that season, you'll have different types of mushrooms pop up at different times within fall. So knowing that sort of stuff is helpful. Let's see. Okay, we're going to move on to the actual video here so we can actually see some mushrooms. But I did have some people ask some questions like, what are the best ways to store mushrooms when you're going to cook them? What are the best ways to, so with storing mushrooms, definitely store them in the fridge. The best way to do it is to store them in a paper bag because they like to breathe. If you store them in plastic, they will go bad really fast. So if you get them in a plastic bag in the store, switch them over to a paper bag as fast as you can. Better to keep them whole. Don't keep them chopped. Don't buy them chopped. That's a good way to just get really gross, nasty, already gone bad mushrooms as if they're already chopped. So buy them whole and chop them yourself when you need to. Store them in a paper bag. And those are the biggest tips for keeping them fresh. All right. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my mic, and I have a little video that I have for you guys that I put together here in where I moved in Oregon, in Coos Bay. So let's do it. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we're going to have a little talk about mushrooms today. We're going to do a little identification for you guys. We're going to talk about different types of mushrooms, what kind of environments they grow in, why they grow in those environments, all sorts of stuff about mushrooms today. So I'm out here right now on the South Oregon coast, specifically Coos Bay, where I moved recently, and I am actually very close to the ocean right now. In fact, you can't see it, but if you look right over there where the end of those trees are, or the end of those bushes, that is a cliff side, and the ocean is just below us there. So we're very close to the coast. We are only really, maybe 100 feet above the ocean, 60 feet above the ocean. So very low elevation. So that sort of sets the stage for where we're at right now. I'm kind of in this, we're in this pine forest, mostly pine, also Douglas fir forest. These are huckleberry trees right here. Our huckleberry bushes. We have salal bushes, is a different type of berry, and that's an environment that mushrooms love. So we're gonna walk through here, we're gonna see what we can find, and I'm actually stopped here already because I found something really cool. So let's take a look down here. And what we're looking at here is what's called Albatrellus fleti. And this is a type of mushroom called a polypore, and I'll show you why. This is commonly known as the blue knight because of the beautiful powdery blue color here. So if you sort of pick one here, you can see the underside. I'll try to zoom in as much as I can and focus here. The underside is filled with tiny, tiny pores, and it's actually, unless you really look closely, it's hard to really see. I won't really focus on them, but those are tiny little pores, the surface down here, the white surface. So the underside is with pores instead of like gills like you would commonly see in most sort of standard looking mushrooms, right? Polypores are generally mushrooms that like to grow on rotting wood. This one grows on rotting wood, but also tends to grow under the base of trees as well. Now it is an edible mushroom. Let's see if we can get a bigger one here. It is an edible mushroom. However, I've actually eaten these before, and yeah, look at this one. Beautiful. I've eaten these before, and I find them pretty bitter. Some people like them though. The texture is pretty good. They're very firm, but yeah, again, not very tasty to me. But a very beautiful mushroom, and I don't see these very often, so it's really cool to see these guys. And if you turn just around here, actually, there's another cool mushroom that I found just in this little part here. And this right here is a type of coral mushroom. And I believe it's a type of Acidiomyces mushroom, which means that instead of most mushrooms which produce spores from the underside, this guy actually produces spores just on all surfaces of the mushroom, and it sort of will sporulate outwards just in all directions. And like you can see one here that's a little bit more pinkish. This one's orange. There are tons and tons of different types of these. Some of them are edible. Some of them give you pretty bad stomach issues, so I just tend to stay away from them. I haven't really tried them yet, but maybe one day. So, all right, let's keep going. See what else we can find out here. Got my little trusty basket here, and we'll see if we can fill it up today. All right, here we go. We're back on another cool mushroom here. So, let's talk about amanitas. So amanitas are a type of mushroom that are really misunderstood, and also we're learning a lot more about them. So, one thing you might, if you know anything about mushrooms, you might know that amanitas are often known as the deadly mushrooms, but there are actually quite a few amanitas that are edible and also delicious. I've eaten a few, and they're actually some of my very favorite mushrooms. You just need to know what you're doing. This one here is not edible. This is likely what is being called a Amanita
Jamata. Usually it has, it's been raining so you can't see it now, but it usually has these little white warts at the top of this pale yellow cap. And amanitas are mycorrhizal mushrooms, which means that they have a host tree that they like to associate with, and they won't actually pop up unless they're associated with that tree. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what exact tree, probably a pine tree here in this case. And it's important with amanitas to identify them. It's really important to dig them up from the very bottom if you can. And this one, ooh, not really doing a great job. Yeah, I didn't quite get out the bottom, but what you'll see here is you can see a little, almost like a little ring around the edge of, around the bottom of it. And what if I had pulled it out completely, you'd see a little bulb at the end, almost like a little sort of egg. And when the amanita comes out, it actually comes out of that little egg. So a couple other identifying features is it is a white gilled mushroom. That means it has white spores. So if you did a spore print of this, it would come out white. Another thing you might not be able to pick up, but it has these little sort of like shaggy sort of things on the stipe or the stem of the mushroom. Some people describe them as little like chevron patterns almost. So yeah, anyway, this is a Amanita jamata. We're still learning a lot about these. In fact, we believe that there are probably many different species of the jamata. So we call it a jamata, we call it the jamata group. Yeah, scientists are learning a lot more about this mushroom. It's pretty interesting. So this is poisonous. Also likely has a chemical called mucimolic acid or ibutamic acid, which is the molecule in these amanitas that actually are psychedelic. So if you ingest it, it has psychoactive properties. However, also will get you really sick unless you prepare it properly. So don't recommend it. Haven't done it myself. Probably won't be doing it. Anyway, pretty cool mushroom regardless. Very beautiful. Here's another one popping up right next to it. Look at that little guy. Cute. All right, so we found our first edible mushroom today, and it's actually surrounded by what are called false chanterelles, which most people think are inedible, but actually are edible, just aren't very tasty. So let's check this out. This right here, this is a hedgehog mushroom. Now, to be able to really identify it, you have to flip it over, but I've seen enough of these guys where I can just immediately tell by the sort of tan, peachy, velvety cap that this is clearly a beautiful hedgehog. Very firm, very beautiful. Probably actually one of my very favorite edible mushrooms. So let's try to get it out from as low as we can. All right, so look at that. It's just a beautiful little pair of hedgehogs right there. Look at that, very cute. So if you look, this is known as a toothed fungi, okay? And so if you can see, they have little tiny teeth there, and that's why it's called a hedgehog. Some people also call them sweet tooth mushrooms. And there are actually many, many varieties of toothed mushrooms here in the Pacific Northwest. And most of them are inedible. This one is one of the edible ones. So again, this hedgehog mushroom. There are a few different types out here of hedgehogs. This one is probably Hydenum washingtonian, which is the American or Western hedgehog mushroom, most common one here. So anyway, pretty beautiful, very, very gorgeous mushroom. And right next to it, we have here a few what people usually call false chanterelles. So I'll pick this one out and you can see it is a beautiful mushroom. This is called Hygrophorus, something like that, Auranticum, something like that, which basically means, Auranticum means orange in Latin. So it's this orange gilled mushroom, and we know it's not a chanterelle for a couple of reasons. One, because the stem, if you split it open, is not going to be white on the inside, okay? Also is going to be hollow on the inside. That is clearly not a chanterelle. Chanterelle split open white, and the flesh is white, and they don't actually have real gills. So this mushroom has soggy but real gills that actually go into the flesh of the mushroom. And we'll find a chanterelle hopefully later on, but chanterelles do not have real gills. They kind of have more like folds or ridges. So yeah, pretty cool. Just to prove here how close we are really to the ocean, check this out. Not bad. Not a bad place to pick mushrooms. Tell you what.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's check out this guy right here. I'm not sure yet, but I'm guessing that this is a type of Cortinarius mushroom. Well, we can tell. Yep, definitely. So this is a type of Cortinarius mushroom. I don't know what exactly, because there are like thousands of different types of Cortinarius out there, at least many hundreds. And you can tell because it has these rusty brown gills. Okay, sort of rusty brown gills, and that's very clearly a Cortinarius. They all have that. If you look closely too, sometimes you can see the cortina, which is a webbing, sort of a little webbing that comes off the gills here, and then you can also usually see a rusty brown spore print around the cap. So that's a Cortinarius mushroom. Mostly not edible, although there are a couple out there that are. I haven't tried any though. So, all right. Well, I've been filming this in little clips as I've been walking. So I've been out here for maybe 45 minutes now, walking through this really dense forest, really overgrown with bushes, which is usually not great for mushrooms. I usually like to find one that sort of has more forest floor that you can navigate through, and the mushrooms tend to like more space, I find. But so I hadn't been finding any chanterelles, and I was just remarking to myself, damn, where are the chanterelles at? When I literally almost kicked one. Doot, 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 doot. Check this out. I'm finding tons of false chanterelles, but this is the first real one, and this is a beauty, I think. Let's see if we can get these out of the way. All right, let's get my knife out. So this right here is my handy dandy trusty mushroom knife. It's from a French company. Sort of standard in the mushroom hunting industry. And it's good because it has a little curved blade on it. So you can sort of get under the mushrooms and around the stipe pretty well. And then it also has a little brush on the end so you can brush off the mushrooms. So let's see what we got here. Kind of get under it. Oh yeah, that's a beautiful cluster. Absolutely gorgeous. So here you can sort of see what I mean by the false gills that I was talking about earlier. So these are not real gills. You see how they sort of fold into the mushroom? They're not actually serrated gills like, most mushrooms. And if you look closely, they kind of just fade away into the stem as they go down. So they're not actually real gills. And that's one easy way to tell that it's a chanterelle and not a false chanterelle like, let's see, like, well, these guys literally right here, which again have these real gills. Okay, so I'm gonna clean this up, and there are actually quite a few more. I'll sort of show you guys before I clean this up. I'll show you guys there are quite a few more. If you look around, right down here is another one. Over here there are some more. And if you look down here, there's a huge one over there. Holy crap, let's take a look at that. Whoa. Now that probably is a little soggy and waterlogged, but probably still good. This very well might be the largest chanterelle I have ever seen in my life. This thing is freaking huge. Oh my God, all these rains we've been having recently. And this is definitely still good, actually. It's a little soggy, but you just cook out the water and it's still perfectly fine. This is still it's a chonky boy. Holy crap. Damn, I should have brought my bigger basket. Uh-oh. All right, cool. And there are just more just everywhere you look. They're actually out here just in among the bushes. It is crazy. All right, well, I'll be back in a bit, guys. I just found this really cool clearing here. Hopefully I'm gonna find some cool stuff. And I did find something pretty interesting here, if you want to take a look with me. So this right here is a type of bolete. All right, and we're gonna find out what in a second, but I'm guessing this is Boletus smithi, or the red-stemmed bolete. Yeah, definitely. So if you see, so first of all, boletes are different from other mushrooms, or are identified because they have a porous surface under the cap Different than a polypore, so it's not as tightly pored as a polypore. Has a lot more of a sort of, you can actually see the pores a lot better in here because they're farther apart. Some have much tighter pores than others. And in this case, this one would probably, well, maybe not quite, but this might qualify as what's called having stuffed pores, meaning they're really tightly together. So it looks almost like a sponge at the bottom. Now, I believe this is also, in fact, it is starting to do this a little bit. This is a blue staining bolete, which is actually an edible one here, but some blue staining boletes actually are poisonous. Most boletes are edible, actually. So this is, again, this is Boletus smithi. It's an edible bolete. This one looks probably like it's a little wormy on the inside, so I'm not going to take it home to eat, but let's cut it open and find out if it bruises blue. So watch this. Let's see. Well, maybe this is not a blue bruising bolete after all. Or it might just be really slowly bruising. Yeah. Well, some of them, if you slice them open, and actually this isn't too buggy. If you slice it open, it will start bruising blue immediately, which is really cool. I think I'll still pass on eating this guy just because I have enough chanterelles to last me for a while. But beautiful, beautiful mushroom. All right, we're still in the same clearing here. I found another different type of bolete. This one, it looks like this. So there are two of them here. One of them clearly got nommed by some sort of creature, right? I wonder, maybe a deer or something. They love mushrooms. But here's one that's more intact. Only a little bite missing outside. Let's see if we can get it out of here. Ooh, it's really stuck on there. Yeah, it's very eaten at the bottom. But this, with that beautiful sort of red stem and velvety red top, really gorgeous velvety red top here. This is a admiral bolete, or Boletus mirabilis, I believe is the scientific name. These are also edible. I really like this. I'm not gonna eat this one, but I really love these mushrooms because, interestingly enough, have a very lemony taste to them. So they're really delicious mushrooms to and interesting to add to all sorts of meals. So pretty cool. And also just, yeah, so beautiful. All right, I'm gonna toss this a little far so I can spread its spores, which is something I like to do when I pick mushrooms. And I guess while I'm on that topic, let's talk a little bit about picking mushrooms, because a lot of people don't really understand what mushrooms are. And the mushrooms are actually the fruiting body. I'll sort of talk as I'm walking around looking for other stuff here. The mushroom is just the fruiting body of the organism, and the actual most of the organism is deep underground. So like these guys here, again, these are the false chanterelles, the Hygrophorus or whatever, aurantica. And these will have a series of mycelium underneath, probably carpeting this whole area. Because if you look around, I mean, these things are just freaking everywhere. I mean, there are a bunch over here, all these sort of guys you see. Ooh, and also, well, I'll come back to these other ones that I see down here in a second, but you can see there, look over here, check this out. Just littering the floor of the forest here, just freaking tons of them. It's really beautiful, actually. So you can probably just, you can imagine the mycelium of these guys is just literally, carpeting. It's probably this whole forest floor, because they're literally, I mean, they're everywhere here. Just nuts, right? You see them just popping up all over. All right, let's go back over here. But so before I show you this other mushroom that I just found, essentially, since the fruiting body, the mushroom itself, is only the fruit of the mycelium, it doesn't actually hurt the organism at all. And the purpose of the mushroom itself is literally only to spread spores. And by the time it opens up, it's already spread hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of spores, if not maybe millions, who knows, I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So picking the mushroom itself really does not do much at all to the organism. And in some cases, it's shown to actually help, because you help spread the spores as you're walking around with the mushrooms, especially if it's a basket with holes and whatnot. So also another common misconception is that it matters if you pull the mushroom out versus cutting it. Some people say you got to cut it versus pull it because you'll hurt the mycelium, and they've done studies on that, and that's also proven to be kind of a myth. So it doesn't really matter. Pick the mushroom, cut the mushroom, doesn't hurt it. It's all good. Do it for science. All right, check this out. So these guys, kind of hard to see in the moss here. These are a type of lactarius mushroom, meaning a milk cap. And in fact, this is part of a family of milk caps called Lactarius delicioso because they're edible. I personally do not find them delicious. They are kind of a mealy, gross mushroom to me. They have this weird thing, so you see it's kind of greenish, bluish, and they actually stain. If you bruise them, they'll stain that color, which is pretty cool. So let's pick a couple of these and I'll show you why they're called a milk cap, because it's pretty neat. Got my trusty knife here. All right, let me sort of set this up so you guys can actually properly see this. Okay, so if you take the mushroom and you just scratch the surface a couple times, let's see if we can get some here. This one might be a little old, so you can't see as much milk coming out of it. Let's try this one. Well, there's a little bit of moisture coming out of it, but it's a little hard to see. But some of them, especially when they're young, will actually bleed when you cut them. They'll bleed a sort of this milk. You know, that's why they're called lactarius mushrooms. In fact, you can see it beating up just a tiny bit right there. And so they sort of, lactarius, lactate, right, milk. So yeah, let's see. I'm trying to get some obvious ones here, but not really having much luck with these. Well, we'll find some more later and some more fresh ones, but these are really cool because they have that beautiful orange stem and then the blue and green top. So Lactarius delicioso. Here's some more coral mushrooms here, still in the same grove here. Look at that, pretty neat, cool things. Let's walk around and see what else we can find. Really just mostly those false chanterelles out here. So many of them. What's this over here? Oh, another hedgehog. There we go. There's another hedgehog right there. Gorgeous. Yummy. And when you find one, it's always good to look around because most mushrooms, as you can probably imagine, with the mycelium running underground, will fruit in groups. So if you find one, look around. In this case, I only found one of them here, but often there will be more. Okay, I'm going to move on from this clearing, but I love looking around these clearings because one, it's easy to move around. Up here, more of those Cortinarius. And then two, the mushrooms tend to they tend to like the open space a little bit. Okay, well, we'll move on. The basket's getting full. I should have brought a bigger basket. Once again, we're over by the beach here. This time over kind of by the dunes and the dune grass among a few little pine trees, coastal pines. And I found one of my favorite mushrooms that pops up this time of year, which is really weird and cool, which are called commonly called purple fairy fingers. So let's check these out. Really weird. So I'm out here. This is a different day I'm filming, and I'm hunting for a type of mushroom called a matsutake. And matsutakis are one of the most prized mushrooms in the world. They're pretty difficult to find, and I'll tell you why. I'll show you why in a second, because I actually found one. They grow in very specific locations in like pretty sandy soil, under pine trees, and they have to have a lot of like very specific conditions to be able to grow. Another thing is, matsutakis tend to grow under the soil and don't even really pop above the soil until they're mature, completely mature. So they're best when they're not even completely mature yet. So to find them, you kind of have to find lumps in the soil, which I'll show you in a second. And so these are a really prized mushroom in Japan. These can sell for up to like $200 for a mushroom. The Western version of the matsutake aren't quite as sought after, but still very expensive mushroom, and again, a treat to find. So let's take a look at where we're at right now. Again, it's a little pine forest. This is actually a little ATV track that I explored last year and found this spot. So I actually know this is a good spot for matsutakis, which is why I'm here. And probably wouldn't have found this one if I hadn't already known that the matsutakis would be here and know what to look out for. So check this out. Here we are. And if you see right here, there's a disturbance in the soil. Very, very slight. But watch this. That right there, I'm pretty sure is a beautiful matsutake. Completely covered. Kind of root bound here to dig it up. Oh, damn. Well, wasn't able to get it fully up, but yes, that is a matsutake right there. The rest out here. So one way to tell is that the stems always have this sort of ashy, sandy bottom to them. Another way to tell is that they're really firm. Like, I'm squeezing it with pretty much all my might, and it does not crack. If it does crack when you squeeze it, or you give it a firm squeeze, then you can almost immediately tell it's not a matsutake. Matsutakis also have very distinct smell, so that's one way to tell them apart. And some people even say they smell like dirty gym socks, which I don't necessarily agree with, but some other people say it's like Red Hots, like the candy. Yeah, so anyway, this is a matsutake. We'll see if there's some more around here, because there usually are more if you find one. And yeah, I'm excited to find it. All right. Still out matsutake hunting, but I found a beautiful Amanita muscaria. One of the most classic mushrooms. Oh, look at this guy, he's just popping up here. Just barely popping up. I'm not gonna dig him up, but this little sandy guy. So you can see this has a partial veil, which essentially means that the whole cap comes from this sort of egg. And as it hatches, as the mushroom grows, the veil starts cracking on the top, and that's where you get these warts. So as the mushroom spreads out, these warts will come apart, and that's where you get those classic sort of Alice in Wonderland white sort of shaped warts on there. Beautiful. interesting mushroom. This right here, this is a type of Pluterius mushroom. Probably the deer mushroom, which is an edible mushroom. Have these sort of white spores that if you do a spore print, it'll turn out kind of like tan, even a little greenish. Yeah, this is a deer mushroom. Unfortunately, it's really gone by, but over here I found what is called chicken of the woods. Look at this. This is actually an edible mushroom. Now I wouldn't eat it at this stage, it's really hard. But it's a type of polypore called Leoporus coniferous, I believe, because this is on a conifer tree. Here's some of the remains of it. Oh man, it's really, wow, crazy. That's a huge thing. Pretty cool. Yeah, very neat. Too bad it's a little past its prime. There's a really cool little area here. Looks like I found a little shrine down there. I'd keep going up there, but it's getting a little dark, so I gotta head back. Beautiful.
Here's some more Amanita muscarias just starting to pop up. Look at that. See what I mean by the warts on the top there. Beautiful. Gotta love them. And over here you have a couple more. Just starting to come up. Look at that. Found one of our more interesting mushrooms out here. I love to find. This is called a Western Guild Bolete right here. Sort of sticky pinkish red cap, and then yellowish stem, and then these decurrent gills that run down the cap a little bit. Really beautiful mushroom, and one of the very few Guild Bolete species that we have here on the West Coast. Very neat. As you guys hopefully remember, most boletes, almost all of them, are identified through having pores. So that is one major difference between most boletes and the Western Guild Bolete. And another one here, this right here, is Hydnellum suavicolens. It is a tooth fungi. As you see here, you can sort of see it has those white teeth, and then also has, let's see if I can pick one here, show you. Very firm. You can see it has blue, these blue stems, and when it's fresh, they're really, really bright blue. Very cool mushroom. And they actually smell like biscottis to me, kind of like aniseed biscottis. A really delicious smell. Some people call them the sweetbread mushroom. So very, very cool mushroom here. Some people actually put them in their car and use them as air fresheners. Pretty neat. And we're at a different lake today. Check out this guy that we found. Super solid mushroom. I think this is what's called, yeah, it must be, it's huge. This is what's called, common name is a cat's paw mushroom, I believe. Let's double check though. Oh yeah, look at that thing, it's massive. So this is, I forget what the scientific name is, I'll post it in the little caption. But cat's paws are a mushroom that has, I didn't even pull out the whole stipe or stem of the mushroom, but it has a really long stem, goes really far into the soil. Sometimes, you know, it's like, can be as far down as like to there. And this is a mushroom that gets commonly, let me remove the little veil here. This is a mushroom that gets commonly misidentified as a matsutake, but you can identify a cat's paw because it has what are called decurrent gills. These are gills that go down the stipe of the mushroom, whereas a matsutake, the gills will stop right at the stem of the mushroom. Another thing is these do not smell like matsutakes. This one you can see is a lot darker than most matsutakes would be. They don't have a sort of ashy, sandy tip of the stipe. These are an edible mushroom. I haven't tried them yet. They're not supposed to be that good, but one day I'll probably give it a try. Yep, so that's a cat's paw. Huge mushroom. I believe what I've found right here is
pig's ear mushroom, or otherwise known as a violet chanterelle. Clavicus. I don't know. I have to look up the scientific name. But let's take a look at this guy. Check this out. Yeah, look at that. Beautiful purple violet gills, which are actually not real gills, false gills. I don't know if you can quite make out that beautiful purple color. Unfortunately, these are almost always really buggy, but they are edible. So let's see. Let's bust out my knife and we'll take a look to see how buggy this thing really is on the inside. Well, surprisingly not so buggy. You'll just have to take some home and eat it. Check out this absolute beauty right here. So this is a type of mushroom called a russula, otherwise known as a brittle gill, because the white gills are very brittle and they can break really easily. Yeah, it's a very beautiful mushroom. Little newt bud. Hello, guy. Alright, let's do this little bolete right here. This is a type of bolete commonly known as a Zeller's bolete or Xeromyces zelleri. These are edible. They have a lemony sort of taste to them, as well as being a really pretty mushroom. I might take this home to eat if it's not too buggy. We'll check this guy out. This right here is a type of puffball. Now watch. Those are all spores. Each time I do that, those are literally hundreds of thousands of spores coming out. Very awesome.